You can feel the mood of a room change before anyone says a word. People probably call you intuitive. They might say you have high emotional intelligence. They might say you are so good with people, but there is another possibility. You are not reading the room. You are checking for danger. You are not the room's emotional thermostat because you are naturally gifted. You might be the emotional thermostat because at some point the temperature of the room decided whether you felt safe. And yes, that sounds dramatic. But so does knowing someone is mad just because they put a cup down slightly too hard. That is not intuition. That is childhood Wi-Fi. Some people walk into a room and think nice lighting. You walk into a room and think, okay, who is upset, who is pretending not to be upset, who is about to make it everyone's problem, and do I need to become funny in the next 4 seconds? That is not just empathy, that is emotional surveillance. And for a long time it may have worked. It may have made you the calm one, the mature one, the easy one, the one who just gets it. But here is the problem. A skill that helped you survive as a child can quietly exhaust you as an adult, because eventually you do not just notice the mood of the room. You start believing you are responsible for it. And that is where the trouble begins. There is a specific kind of person who feels responsible for everyone's emotions. They sense tension before the conversation even changes. They hear one slightly different tone and immediately start reviewing the last 10 minutes like emotional security footage. Did I say something wrong? Was that joke too much? Should I apologize? Should I ask if they are okay? Should I disappear into the wall and become a tasteful piece of furniture? They are often funny, thoughtful, observant, and weirdly good at knowing when someone is off. And because this looks useful, people praise it. They say you are so mature. You are such a good listener. You always know how to calm people down. You are the peacemaker, which sounds nice, until you realize that being the peacemaker often means you grew up in a place where peace was not the default. It was a job, and somehow that job got assigned to you. A lot of childhood peacemakers did not choose that role. They did not wake up at 7 years old and say, you know what would be fun? Becoming the emotional project manager of this household. No. They learned it because the house had weather. Maybe one parent's mood controlled everything. Maybe silence meant danger. Maybe a slammed door was not just a slammed door. Maybe a sigh could ruin the entire evening. Maybe you had to know who was angry before they admitted they were angry. Maybe you had to make someone laugh before they exploded. Maybe you had to comfort an adult who should have been comforting you, so you became alert, agreeable, useful. You became the child who could feel the storm coming before anyone else reached for an umbrella, and people may have called that maturity. But sometimes maturity is just anxiety wearing a tiny blazer. As a child, this kind of awareness can feel like survival. If I can predict the mood, I can prevent the conflict. If I can prevent the conflict, I can feel safe. If I can make everyone okay, maybe I will be okay too. That logic makes sense to a child. Because children depend on the adults around them. So when the adults are unpredictable, easily upset, emotionally unavailable, or constantly tense, the child usually does not think, wow, this adult needs better regulation skills. The child thinks I need to be better, quieter, funnier, smarter, less needy, more helpful, less emotional, more invisible, whatever works. And over time, that child develops a very specific superpower. They can read micro-expressions. They can hear tension in someone's breathing. They can detect the difference between normal silence and dangerous silence. They can feel emotional shifts so small they should come with a microscope. But here is the catch. A superpower developed in danger does not always feel like freedom. Sometimes it feels like a smoke alarm that never stops testing itself. That is why adulthood gets confusing. Because now you may be in perfectly normal situations, but your nervous system is still acting like the family living room is about to explode. Your friend gets quiet and your chest tightens. Your partner sends a short text, and suddenly you are mentally writing a courtroom defense. Your coworker seems distant, and now you are wondering if you ruined the entire team dynamic by saying sounds good with the wrong punctuation. This is how it shows up. You apologize when nothing is your fault. You over-explain so no one can misunderstand you. You make jokes to soften tension. You feel guilty when someone else is disappointed. You replay conversations for hours. You ask, are you okay? When what you really mean is, are we okay and do I need to emotionally evacuate? You do not simply enter a room. You emotionally inspect it like a landlord checking for damage. And the exhausting part is that most people do not see the labor. They just enjoy the result. They enjoy that you smooth things over. They enjoy that you notice discomfort quickly. They enjoy that you are low maintenance. But they may not see that your calmness is sometimes not calmness. It is performance. It is strategy. It is your nervous system saying, everybody stay relaxed because I cannot afford for this to become unsafe. This is where we need to separate empathy from hyper-vigilance. Because from the outside, they can look similar. Empathy says, I can understand what you are feeling. Hyper-vigilance says, I need to detect what you are feeling before it becomes dangerous. Empathy has space. Hyper-vigilance has urgency. Empathy feels like connection. Hyper-vigilance feels like unpaid emotional security work. Empathy lets you care. Hypervigilance makes you manage, and that difference matters because empathy allows choice. You can decide to listen. You can decide to help. You can decide to support someone. But hypervigilance does not feel like a choice. It feels like a command. Fix the mood. Lower the tension. Make them comfortable. Do not upset anyone. Do not be too much. Do not need anything right now. And if you fail, something bad might happen. That is why this pattern is so tiring. You are not just being sensitive. You are running a full emotional control center in the background. Is that person mad? Is the group bored? Is the silence awkward? Did I say too much? Should I make it lighter? Should I leave? Should I apologize? Should I pretend I am fine so nobody has to deal with me? By the end of the day, you are not tired because you talk to people. You are tired because you monitored people. There is a difference. Talking to people is social. Monitoring people is surveillance, and surveillance burns fuel. This is why you may need so much alone time afterward, not because you hate people. Although, to be fair, sometimes people do make a strong case. But often you need alone time because being around others turns on a part of you that is constantly scanning. You are watching faces, listening for tone, tracking energy, predicting reactions, adjusting yourself, shrinking here, performing there. Being charming enough to prevent discomfort, but not so visible that you become a target. That is a lot. No wonder you are exhausted. You are not just having dinner. You are producing, directing, editing, and emotionally color correcting the entire dinner, and everyone else is just eating pasta. Underneath this pattern is usually a hidden belief. It might sound like this. If someone around me is upset, I have failed. If I do not manage the mood, something bad will happen. Other people's emotions are my responsibility. This belief can become so normal that you do not even notice it. You just feel guilty when someone is unhappy, even if their unhappiness has nothing to do with you. Someone is quiet and you feel accused. Someone is disappointed and you feel responsible. Someone is uncomfortable and you feel like you need to become a one-person customer service department with trauma-informed lighting. But here is the truth. A feeling can be near you without belonging to you. Someone can be upset in the same room as you, and it still may not be your job to fix it. That sentence sounds simple, but for a former peacemaker, it can feel illegal, because your nervous system learned that peace depended on your performance. It learned that love was safer when you were useful. It learned that being easy made you less likely to be blamed. It learned that if you kept everyone comfortable, maybe no one would turn their discomfort toward you. And that was not weakness. That was adaptation. That was intelligence under pressure. That was your younger self doing the best they could with a situation they should not have had to manage. So the goal is not to shame this part of you. This part protected you. It helped you survive rooms that were too heavy for a child. It gave you awareness. It gave you compassion. It gave you the ability to sense what others miss. But now it needs a new job description, because you are allowed to care without carrying. You are allowed to notice tension without automatically fixing it. You are allowed to be kind without abandoning yourself. You are allowed to support people without becoming responsible for their entire emotional weather system. You are allowed to let a room be awkward. Truly, awkward silence is not a medical emergency. Nobody has ever looked at a quiet dinner table and said, "We need to evacuate immediately." Someone has failed to perform casual banter. Silence can just be silence. A mood can just be a mood. A person can be upset and still be responsible for their own reaction. This is the healing shift. You do not have to become cold. You do not have to stop being empathetic. You do not have to turn into someone who says, "Not my problem," while wearing sunglasses indoors. You simply learn the difference between noticing and owning. Noticing says, "The room feels tense." Owning says, "I must fix the room so everyone is okay." Noticing says, "They seem upset." Owning says, "I must have done something wrong." Noticing says, "There is discomfort here." Owning says, "I need to erase myself until everyone feels better." Healing begins when you can pause between the feeling and the assignment. You feel the tension. Then you ask, "Is this actually mine?" Not, "Can I fix it?" Because you probably can. That is the problem. You are good at fixing it. The better question is it mine? Is this my responsibility? Did I cause harm, or did someone else simply have an emotion? Am I helping because I want to, or because I am afraid of what happens if I do not? That pause is powerful. It interrupts the old reflex. Another useful shift is naming what is happening. You can say to yourself, "This is my peacemaker brain trying to protect me." Not, "I am ridiculous." Not, "I am broken." Not, "Why am I like this?" Just say to yourself, "This is an old protective strategy." Because when you name it, you create distance. You are not the alarm. You are the person hearing the alarm. And if the alarm is going off because someone sighed near a refrigerator, maybe we do not need a full evacuation plan. You can also practice letting small discomfort exist. Let someone be quiet. Let the pause happen. Let the group have a weird 3 seconds. Let your friend be in a mood without immediately climbing inside their brain with a flashlight. This will feel uncomfortable at first. Your nervous system may say, "Do something," but you can respond, "Not yet." You can breathe. You can relax your jaw. You can feel your feet on the floor. You can remind yourself, awkward does not mean unsafe. That one matters. Awkward does not mean unsafe. Tension does not always mean danger. Someone else's mood does not always mean you have failed, and you do not have to apologize your way back into safety. Instead of saying, "Sorry, did I do something wrong?" you might say, "You seem a little quiet today. Everything okay?" That is a small change, but it matters. The first version assumes guilt. The second version allows curiosity. The first version puts you on trial. The second version stays grounded. This is how you begin to retire from being the emotional thermostat. Not all at once, not perfectly. You will still scan sometimes. You will still overthink sometimes. You will still sense the room faster than most people. That is okay. The goal is not to destroy your sensitivity. The goal is to stop making your sensitivity your prison. Because your awareness can become a gift when it is no longer fused with fear. You can be perceptive without being responsible. You can be compassionate without being consumed. You can be emotionally intelligent without being emotionally employed by everyone you meet. And maybe the most healing thing you can learn is this. Other people are allowed to have feelings that you do not fix. They can be disappointed. They can be quiet. They can be annoyed. They can be tired. They can be awkward. They can even be mad. And you can remain yourself. You do not have to become smaller. You do not have to become funnier. You do not have to become easier. You do not have to turn into a human mood ring and start changing colors for the comfort of the group. You can stay in your body. You can stay in your truth. You can stay present because you were not born to regulate every nervous system in the room. You were not born to keep the peace at the cost of your own. You were not born to be useful enough to deserve calm. You were a child who learned to survive by becoming alert, and that deserves compassion. But now, as an adult, you can begin to choose something different. You can care, you can notice, you can support, but you do not have to carry. The room can have a mood. You do not have to become its manager. And the next time you feel that old reflex rise in your chest, the one that says, fix this before something bad happens, try pausing for just one breath. Ask yourself, is this mine? And if the answer is no, let the room keep its weather. You are allowed to be a person in the room, not the thermostat, not the smoke detector, not the emergency response team, just a person, and that is enough. If this felt uncomfortably accurate, you may not be dramatic. You may just be recovering from a role you never asked for. So if you want more psychology reframes that make your coping mechanisms feel personally attacked, but in a healing way, subscribe. Because sometimes the thing you call your personality was actually your survival strategy wearing a nice outfit.